and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, China rolls out the red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's also set to appear at the SCO summit in Qingdao this weekend. What's likely on the agenda of the meeting between President Xi Jinping and President Vladimir Putin this time? And the SCO opens for business with the Forum for Entrepreneurs to talk about trade and economic connectivities. How can member states keep the engines of growth humming within the organization? You're watching World Insight. Russian President Vladimir Putin makes his first state visit to China under his new presidential term, and he will attend the SCO summit in Qingdao this weekend. This is also the very first meeting between the heads of states of China and Russia this year. In the past decade, the bilateral relations between China and Russia have blossomed, especially the strategic partnership that has been running high since Chinese President Xi took office 5 years ago. What will be the focus of discussion during the meeting between President Xi and President Putin this time? How can tight-knit China-Russia together weather global uncertainties over rising protectionism and unilateralism?
A medal that honors Vladimir Putin's outstanding contributions in promoting the friendship between China and Russia.
也是当前高水平
President Putin, with his great global influence, is the founder and promoter of the profound friendship between China and Russia in today's era. President Putin is the Chinese people's most respected and most familiar head of state, and he is also my most intimate friend.
也是我最好的知心朋友。
In recent years, guided and promoted by President Xi Jinping and President Putin, China-Russia relations have reached a historic high.
Xi Jinping.
On July 4, 2017, in Moscow, Putin presented President Xi with Russia's highest honor. China and Russia have worked together on the global stage, such as in the BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. With China's expanding influence in Central Asia, Sino-Russian ties played a much more vital role than ever in the development of the ICO. Russia is more concentrated on international security issues, and China has focused its attention on economic governance and multilateral bodies such as the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank.
Our objective was quite small, but as we worked together on these small issues, we found similarities between us. We realized that together we could achieve something bigger.
Like many other countries, strategic ties wouldn't exist when there are differences in cognition. And for today's China and Russia, perhaps it indeed is a common ideology, strong consensus, and huge potential for win-win cooperation that bring them happily together.
For more on China-Russia ties, let's ask our panelists. With us in our Beijing studio, Yang Xiyu, who is a senior fellow at the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome, sir. And joining us in Moscow, Russia, we have Alexander Lukin, professor and director of East Asian and SCO Studies at the Moscow State Institute of International Relations. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Certainly, the 8th is a big day for China-Russia relations, particularly if you look at the recent record. Mr. Lukin, Professor, may I ask you, so what does this frequent visit, interaction by the two state leaders mean and could mean for the nature of this bilateral relations?
Well, the nature of our relations with China is, of course, strategic partnership. But it's not just an ordinary strategic partnership, because I know that China has strategic partnership with many countries. The thing is that Russian-Chinese relations are based on mutual and almost identical views of the international situation, of where the world goes. So the main reason for the rapprochement between the two countries is that I would say the common vision and geopolitical interests. And the main interest is that both Russia and China stand for multipolar world. They're against one power center dominating the international system. And this is the main reason that they cooperate on many international issues.
Right.
Economic cooperation is also important, but it's not the main thing.
I remember during an interview, Mr. Yang, that President Putin had with CCTV earlier. He talked about, he liked talking about issues related to economic development and global affairs with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Oh yeah.
He thought he always could have great conversations.
Well, I think the close ties between the two countries, one of the pillar for the base of the bilateral relation is the very close ties in the individual two leaders, top leaders. Not only because of the personal friendship, that's not important, but important thing is the two leaders really share many views on many important issues in the world, including the economic affairs. You know, both Xi Jinping, in my observation, both Xi Jinping and Putin put top priority at their respective domestic economic development, especially for the green and sustainable development. So, based on the shared view, shared vision, shared goal, there are a lot of subjects between the two to talk about, to discuss, to explore. So that is really a solid pillar for the bilateral relation.
And of course, the two are very much active in talking about some of the common ground.
Oh, yeah.
For example, economic development. Mr. Yang, during the interview with CCTV, President Putin talking about the bilateral trade over the past 4 months of this year, already exceeding the overall situation of last year, the whole year. So it seems that there is a momentum of picking up. Russia, after Western sanctions, has an urgency of developing its economy and has this momentum to do so. And China as well want to develop further into this partnership with Russia and in the region. But Mr. Yang, what eventually will drive this relationship?
Well, I think just as our Russian friend mentioned, now economic part is not important one in the general bilateral relation. But just because of that, I believe the economic cooperation between the two commands the greatest potentials in the whole bilateral relation. Just look at the two vast countries. Number one, both of the countries remain at the developing level, and number two, both of the countries commands quite a diversified advantages between the two. So a lot of potentials to be explored. That is the that contains a bright future for both of the countries.
Well, we could talk about the bright future, but how is the bright future going to be implemented? And also, rather, what are the details of this bright future? Professor Lu King, you have some areas to be identified?
Well, China is the most important partner for Russia. It's the first Russian trading partner since the year 2010, and it's a big market for Russian oil, for example, and some other raw materials. But now more and more, Russia is selling to China some agricultural products and also some food products. So China is also one of the major investors into Russian economy, including the raw material sector. For China, Russia is, I would say, relatively less important, because Russia is only in the second 10 of China's main economic partners. And also, Russia and China are both interested in the development of China's northeastern provinces and Russian Far Eastern and Siberian regions. And here we have quite a booming border trade, cross-border cooperation, investment in Russian Far East. So we have a lot of areas of for economic cooperation.
Not only Far East, but also so-called the Far West. If you look at the western part of China and also how China come up with the Belt and Road Initiative with other players in the region, you also look at the EU, Eurasian Economic Union. Both leaders have been talking about the cooperation between these two initiatives. And Mr. Yang, help me to understand, have we seen a healthy track record of cooperation and correlation between these two initiatives?
Well, I think at this moment, both of the great initiatives remain at the initial stage. That means greater potentials ahead. Now, both sides, I mean, Russian government and the Chinese government has determined to make further efforts to make a closer cooperation between the two initiatives so that the two sides can get a win-win results and get a 1 + 1 produce more than 2 effect. So I think not only the traditional areas like agricultural raw materials and military products, but also the two initiatives cooperation and collaboration will open broader range of cooperation between Russia and China as well as this region.
But having said that, though, we see Russian President Vladimir Putin, when he's talking about these two initiatives, he said that the Chinese President Xi Jinping has this global vision, and also he talked about the two initiatives fit with one another. Professor, looking how fit really are the two initiatives with one another? Will they really blossom individually and together? Do you see any signs of it?
A few years ago, China and Eurasian Economic Union signed a declaration on cooperation, and this year they already completed and signed the cooperation agreement. So it's basically in the interests of China to have only one customs border instead of several customs borders for the member states. So it opens the market more and more of those 5 countries to Chinese investments and trade. From Russian point of view, and also other members of the customs union, because they all need Chinese investments and need growing trade with China.
Right.
Of course, they're also interested in that.
In the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, are they going to be competing and cooperating within that platform, or there's likely to be some quite close synergy between the two?
At the beginning stage, I remember some of observers worried about the strategic competition between the two big powers within the organization. But through the years and the years of practices, both of the countries provide evidence that Russia and China has got closer and closer cooperation for this organization. No strategic competition for dominance, but collaboration and cooperation for strengthening and widening the cooperation across all of the members.
Well, you know, gentlemen, recently we have heard that the Russian president talking about 3 important players of the SCO. Mr. Yang, I want you to comment about that as well. China, Russia, and India. Of course, there are probably different views coming from China as to who are the important players of the SCO, and probably from the other members of the SCO. What do you think, Mr. Yang, about the future potential when you see SCO develops into different areas? And how will different sides look at the future of SCO with different lenses?
Well, I think SCO will be in evolution towards more and more unique multilateral organization in the current international order. Just look at all of the international and regional organizations. Almost all organizations specified in certain areas, for example, security or economic. But SCO become more and more comprehensive cooperation organization, and number one. And then number two, SCO develop a very unique but a great model for cooperation. Say, in the organization, just as I mentioned earlier, no competition for dominance. So in this organization, we create a new model, say all members cooperate and act on, based on equal footing.
Okay, Professor Looking, is it possible?
Well, the main interesting thing that's happened this summit of Shanghai Cooperation Organization is, of course, that new members for the first time took part in this summit as full members, and these are India and Pakistan. Russia and China are, of course, the largest members of the, or used to be the largest members of organizations before that, and some people even called this organization somehow dominated by Russia and China, which was not exactly true. But at the moment, India, of course, is going to play also a very important role, and all these three countries basically share the geopolitical view. Some of them have some problems between them, but for an international organization, this is not very important. The important thing that though they both share the world view that the world should be multipolar, that all players should be equal, what they call that the international system should be democratized, meaning that there should be no domination by one power, and I think they will cooperate on that. I also hope that India could give a push for economic cooperation, because frankly speaking, economic cooperation within SCO as an organization is very low. There is, of course, cooperation between individual states, but not on the multilateral basis. There are basically no multilateral projects.
Mr. Yang, when you look at an organization, if it is security,
well,
or if it is about economic and trade ties, these are two very different focuses. So it really, in a way, is now the time for SCO to streamline what exactly it wants to do and what exactly is going to be the priority.
SCO was mainly focused on the cooperation for security, the shared security. By the way, I think SCO has been making or creating a new model for the security concept. Now, the very popular security concept in the world is the so-called collective security. I think SCO, the model of shared security created by SCO, the key difference from the collective is the inclusive security or exclusive security.
Okay.
And SCO gives the inclusive security. That make every member and the non-member are comfortable.
Okay.
Because we exclude no countries. We target at no countries. That is the right way for the new era's security for all countries.
Well, Mr. Yang, having explained that concept, I want you to go back to the economic and trade ties. What about the focus of SCO for the future?
Number one, I think the role of the SCO is expanding on the way. Not moving from security to economy, actually expanding from security cooperation to economic cooperation. So number two, gradually this organization will become a cooperation organization for wider range of areas,
well,
both economic and security.
That certainly is the vision. Will that be done? Professor Lukin, briefly.
Well, there are not many areas actually. So, for example, if we talk about security, there's basically military cooperation, which is going on very well, and also cooperation on anti-terrorist activities. There's an anti-terrorist structure based in Tashkent, which works pretty well.
Yeah.
So there are two main areas. Of course, there are also some general discussions, but in economics, as I said, there are virtually no progress. So it's not, you can call it broad in general, but if you talk about specific areas of cooperation, there are not too many.
All right. Certainly we have some very different views, and certainly we see a lot of work needs to be done for this year's SCO Summit for discussion of the future. Thank you so much, Yang Xiyu and Alexander Lukin from China and Russia for being with us. Thank you. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. Trade connectivity is the name of the game as the SCO Business Forum gets down to business. How can member states keep the momentum of trade growth going? We will ask our panelists from different member countries of the SCO right after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. The coastal city of Qingdao will host the 18th SCO Summit from June the 9th to the 10th. China welcomes back summit leaders 6 years after it was held in Beijing in the year 2012. It's no coincidence. SCO member states have recorded growth in trade. Multilateral economic plans are being discussed to synergize each country's growth roadmaps. As India and Pakistan step in, how will member states work with each other within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Take a look at this first.
How can SCO countries synergize development strategies and promote connectivity? That's what the SCO Business Forum sought to answer.
I suggest member countries, SCO Business Council, chambers and associations to push forward the connection of Belt and Road Initiative with development policies like the Eurasian Economic Union and the Bright Road, and to make full use of each country's advantages and resources, industrial structure, technologies, talents and finance to achieve associated development.
The SCO countries are building land, sea, aviation, telecom connections among each other, and Chinese companies are involved in many of such projects. Trade between China and other SCO member countries hit $217 billion last year, compared with $12 billion in 2001. Another country which saw a significant increase in trade volume is Uzbekistan.
By 2017, Uzbekistan had $20 million worth of trade volume with other member countries, a large increase compared to before. That trade is of great importance, and among that, small and medium-sized companies played an important role.
The forum gathered 300 trade officials, business leaders, and entrepreneurs, and they all had their own takeaways. Building platforms, connectivity, and facilitation. Those are the main goals of the Business Forum. Speakers and participants are also expecting policies announced at the Qingdao Summit to help better achieve their business ambitions.
The SCO was initially created for security, but now it focuses more and more on economic and trade cooperation. On the sidelines of the SCO Business Forum in Beijing, I sat down with some panelists coming from different countries of SCO member states to talk about the synergy and the future of SCO. And I'm so glad to be joined here by three panelists. They're coming from different countries among the SCO member states. In the middle, shall we go to? First of all, we have Shiv Khemka, who is the head of the Indian business delegation to the SCO. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Also here, we have Colin Yang, who's the chief branding officer of China SCO. That, of course, is a new technology firm regarding China's energy development. Good to see you. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Zhang Xing, Senior Vice President of China National Oil and Gas Exploration and Development Company. Welcome, sir. So first of all, I really want to ask the three of you, how big really is your presence in the SCO countries regarding your global operation? Mr. Yang, you want to go first?
Yes, I think China SCO will attach great importance to the business cooperation with the member countries of SCO. And starting from India, that is one of our major market in the emerging area. China SCO has started to explore the market a few years ago, and we have done a very good job, actually. We have a local team is around 20 people.
Okay.
And it's almost 99% is localization. So the majority of the office is local, the Indian people. They know the local market better than the people from our headquarters.
So you are saying you are having certain kinds of competition with Mr. Kemka because his company is also dealing with new energy, huh?
Actually, I'm very happy to learn that your company is called the Sun. The Sun is also connected with the solar. So I think the competition is okay, but as long as the whole world is paying more attention to renewable, to solar, the future world will be better.
That sounds diplomatic, I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Kemka, what do you think about partners, competitions coming from different SCO member countries?
But actually, I completely agree with what was just said here.
Come on, really?
Completely agree, because, you know, the demand for energy in a country like India, where we consume 1/5 per capita the energy consumed by people in China, as an example, we need to go to renewable energy. And India has one of the largest pushes towards solar energy, renewable energy in the world. And so I think the more the better, frankly, because it reduces costs, it increases access. And so we're great believers, actually, in more effort on renewable energy,
right,
more connectivity between our countries. China has led the way in renewable energy, doing some great things. And so India is very excited to work. And in fact, not only India, Russia, the whole SCO region, I think integration in terms of cooperation in these things will only help each of us.
Yeah, you have two hats. One is heading the business delegation to the SCO. The other is as the vice chairman of the Sun Group, one of the biggest family businesses in India. But Mr. Kemka, what do you make of your global presence vis-a-vis your cooperation with the SCO countries?
So we as a group have been working in Russia, as an example, since 1958. This is our 60th year working with Russia.
Congratulations.
We're the largest.
I hope China's cooperation will be as long as that and even longer.
Yes, we hope so. So we have just started working closely with China now. We have a partnership with China Gold,
yes,
to work in Russia, in a gold mine in Russia together. We are working with some Chinese companies in India. We're working with many Russian companies in India. And so we're working much more in the region. We've worked in Kazakhstan. We've done some things in Uzbekistan. So I think the whole region will benefit greatly by more integration, more connectivity, and more cooperation between
So there's already a lot of synergy there among the businesses. That's what we're talking about already.
It's starting.
It is starting. What about Mr. Zhang? Is it starting for you and your company?
You see that we entered the SCO countries since 1997. So far we are working in 80 countries and have 25 projects. So far we work in Kazakhstan, Russia, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan. You see the business here is most for the petroleum exploration and exploitation. Also include chemical refinery, pipeline. So we talk about upstream, middle stream, and downstream.
Wow.
It's integrated cooperation in those countries.
If you list all those businesses and also ways of doing business, it seems that there are billions of investment you put over there.
For sure. You see, since this high investment in this country, we have the win-win situation. Not only we work in the international, not only get the benefit, also we look for the fully support for the local economic. So far, we already extended some contracts. We believe we are in this area will be efficiency.
You know, you operate in those SCO countries 20 years already. Before, there's a group called FCO even. But the question is, you see certain kinds of political changes in these countries. You see also different stages of development over the past 20 years. So how do you as a business be able to not only survive but also thrive among all of these changes? I guess that's something I should ask you about, because it seems that you are the only one that is operating in most of the SCO countries.
Yeah, we believe through our experience, we believe with environmental change, political change, economic change, also we need a change.
Oh,
suitable for the investment environment.
Give me an example. How do you go with the flow?
We built the trust
yes.
with the local people. Through so many years, we not only working for petroleum, we also have the support for education and for the training program and communication. So many
capacity building for the local people.
Yeah. So through all of the society contribution, we understand each other. Then environment change, we change, so we survive all the time.
All right. That, of course, for a company like yours, which has been there for 20 years. But what about for a company like yours, Mr. Yang? I mean, your presence in different countries are not that long yet.
Solar is a younger history, so we were not that elder than like our colleagues. So from the SCO member countries, I think India is one of our major market. We are taking a longer view to see whether we have the possibility to explore the market in the other member countries. But starting from India, I think the Indian government really set up a very ambitious goal of solar development. They have a 100 gigawatt solar installation plan by the year of 2022.
I see.
So this will give a very good opportunity for Chinese solar industry and also other countries' solar industry company to go to the Indian market and to develop.
Mr. Khemka, we have to admit, I mean, China and India, over the past few years, it has not been all the time smooth. There has been ups and downs. Until recently, the two presidents have this wonderful informal talk in Wuhan, and it seems there are visionary plans that the two have already have in mind for the two countries. But Mr. Khemka, you know, given all these possibility of ups and downs in bilateral relations, whether it's China, India, or other countries among the SCO members, how do you see the strategies company like yours should have in terms of cooperation?
So we firmly believe that economic engagement strengthens political ties.
You do that. You do
we believe deeply that we must work together.
Mm.
Only by working together we understand each other, we build friendships, we build relationships, and builds a much stronger bond
yes.
of political relationships. So although politically maybe there's some bumps in the road,
right.
India today, the biggest trading partner is China. So for us, for India, we think China is very important, and not just China, the whole SCO grouping, we think is a very important way to actually create jobs, to create trade, to create investment, to create cultural integration. You know, as you know, SCO may be a new construct, but the relationships between our countries go back thousands of years.
Sure.
Central Asia and India, you know, the great kings Babur came to India, set up the Mughal Empire. Our cultures are intertwined, our languages are intertwined.
Religion as well.
Religions, so things are very, very closely intertwined. And this is just a format that is now bringing us together in an organized way to actually create more integration, prosperity, sustainability, and peace for the region. And I'm a great believer that the more we do together as business people, the more we can actually do.
I've always wondered, Mr. Khemka, if our ancestors had the vision and the wisdom to be able to work together, even under much more difficult circumstances, transportation and things like that, they could be able to interact so actively in their times. Why couldn't we have the wisdom to do the same, or probably even better?
But I think we do, actually. I think the noise at the surface should be slightly discounted. I think deeply we are working closely together. More and more work is happening. We are working not only together in India and in China, or together in Russia, or together globally. I think there's much more interaction. But to me, I think the key is going to be people-to-people exchange.
Right.
More education, more connectivity. And the more we do that, I think the more we will build much stronger linkages.
Different initiatives. For example, Eurasian Economic Union or the Belt and Road Initiative, those are the initiatives coming from 2 member states of the SCO, China and Russia. Any opportunities that these leaders and this interaction between these 2 initiatives have already created for you? What still needs to be done?
I think we both are very appreciative to the initiative of BRI and also the initiative by
Eurasian Economic Union.
That's right, by the Russian leader. So I certainly believe the more initiative we have like this will bring the more opportunity for the businessmen from one member country to another member country. So more understanding will make more opportunities.
Mr. Kemka, you see different countries brought out different visions. China BRI and Russia EU. I'm sure other countries like India, you also have your vision of cooperating with regional partners. So how will these mechanisms correlate and interact with one another, particularly for the help to the business community?
So I think that actually each of these initiatives is looking at the same issue with a slightly different lens. So one lens is a Chinese lens, one is a slightly Russian lens, one might be a slightly Indian lens.
Yes.
And yes, there'll be some differences. There'll be some things which are more in the interest of one country than the other country. But at the end of the day, I completely agree with what my colleagues are saying, is that the more of these initiatives you have, it creates an enabling architecture for business as a whole to take advantage of whatever they want to do in that environment. So maybe Chinese companies will benefit more from BRI particularly, maybe the Russian companies will benefit more, but at the end of the day, it will create more architecture to connect our countries together in terms of trade, in terms of investment, in terms of people exchange, infrastructure, energy, and so on. So all of that will create a much stronger bond for prosperity, sustainability, and peace.
The debate going on in the world about the international trade system, about the concept of globalization, about unilateral vis-a-vis multilateral. How do you, from your business perspective, see these issues?
So I think global trade rules, multilateral rules, have helped create one of the biggest economic booms in history, have brought billions of people out of poverty. And so personally, and this is speaking as an individual, I'm a great believer in globalization. I'm a believer that we must integrate more, we must find advantages and find ways to actually connect economies together. Yes, that will create pain in different economies, but if we work in a cooperative way with multilateral institutions that are strong, that actually can put in place frameworks that allow this to work in a fair and just manner, I believe we will do much better in the long run than if we only look out for our own individual interest as a country. Maybe in the short run we will do better, but as a world we will not do as well.
Yeah, I fully with Chief on this point. I think the cooperation and mutual understanding between China and India is a good example for other countries to follow. Why? A few years ago, the Indian solar equipment manufacturers, they initiated a kind of a petition for trade barrier and tariff imposing on Chinese solar manufacturers. So started carefully and comprehensively. I believe the Indian government has made a very strategic decision. They have seen that the trade barrier between India and China will be a double-edged sword to both countries. So finally, they give up this kind of trade barrier. So that is a good condition and solidation to ensure that the cooperation between China and India in solar market developed smoothly and successfully.
The SCO summit is really coming up. So I guess from the business community, you do have some wishes for the governments and the heads of state to work on. I'm sure you have a wish list. What should they do in terms of supporting business?
Yeah, I think the leaders of the member countries of SCO, they they can keep the political and the security issue on their mind, but also make sure that to make the renewable development as one of the important sectors when they are making the decision.
Only renewable development? Is that what you're thinking? What about Mr. Zhang?
So
you're coming from the oil sector.
Yeah, we use this opportunity. Will be signed the new agreement with the resources countries. I believe everybody will respect the new agreement.
All right. We hope there will be a lot of real stuff in the new agreement. And Mr. Kemka, last but not least.
So I agree with both the gentlemen. I think the important thing is to create enabling infrastructure for us to work together more closely. That's what the government leaders should do. So, for example, maybe there should be a new SCO financial architecture, like a BRICS bank, a new development bank, or AIIB, maybe an SCO-focused banking structure, banking infrastructure, which allows us to work, legal infrastructure, etc., which allows us to work more closely together and do things in each other's countries and as partners.
All right. I hope those leaders could hear our voices and they would work on all of these important areas for all of us for the future. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Mr. Yang, Mr. Kemka, and Mr. Zhang. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A panel discussion on the trade and economic ties among countries of SCO members. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.